you work at
They didn't change, the next promotion would be.
I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jacksonville Planning Advisory Board to order. At this time, will be led by in the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Lasan, followed by the invocation from Al Keys.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty and merciful God, we thank you for being a part of the Planning Advisory Committee. Lord, we pray that you would give us wisdom to make appropriate and proper decisions that are in the best interest of the citizens of this city. Lord, we pray for our city officials, our county, state, and national officials as we recover from the tragedy of the coronavirus. We remember those individuals, Lord, that are victims and those that have passed as a result of this. We especially remember the Dorn family, Lord, as we also mourn the loss of Jim Dorn, who was a member of this planning committee. We pray that you would give the family peace and comfort, Lord, as in the next few days and in the years to come. Father God, we pray for the first responders as they have been so important as a part of this. Lord, keep them safe as they go about their daily jobs, as well as the medical staff in the hospitals and clinics and nursing homes as well. All of this we ask in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, gentlemen. We have an agenda in front of us. Any changes, corrections? If not, a motion to approve the agenda is in order.
So move.
Motion to approve the agenda by Dr. Lasan.
Second.
Second by Robert Sandy. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes. Review and approval of the minutes. You've got minutes in front of you. Take a look through. See if there's anything needs to be changed. If not, a motion to approve is in order.
Move that the minutes be approved as written.
Motion by Al Keys, second by Mr. Forney, to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes. Council update, Councilman Warden.
Mr. Chairman, at our last meeting on April 21st, we approved 3 items that y'all had previously sent to us. One of them was the repeal of the 2005 flood damage prevention ordinance, and we adopted the new one that the state sent us with the exception that we talked about here at the planning board, deleting the requirement for some of the definition of substantial damage, such that we don't have to track damage over a 10-year period and accumulate it in order to decide whether somebody is flood damaged or not. We felt like that was going to be a little bit onerous on or too much of a burden for some of our people here in the city. So we adopted a little more lenient look towards that. I believe if Mr. King has anything to add on that.
The only thing that I would add that we didn't have on the report that we should have, and for that I apologize. We did adopt panel 4398.
Yeah.
That's one panel. Interestingly enough, that area that is in that panel, most of it's in the county's jurisdiction, a small portion's in the ETJ. And the rezoning that we have as numbered, the map amendment, agenda item A, is actually within that panel, I'm pretty sure. So all of the other flood maps are still under, the panels are under the appeal. And we won't know the results of that until probably the end of this year, the beginning of 2021. So we did go ahead and adopt that panel 4398 because so much of it was in the county's jurisdiction. And with that, that basically happened as a result of adopting the new floodplain, the flood damage prevention ordinance. Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, it was a complicated little procedure, and it's much better to have somebody expert talk a little bit about it. We also rezoned Northwood United Methodist Church. You remember that? They were wanting to go from RS7 to a corridor commercial because they were limited on what they could do from their sign standpoint under a residential. And we also looked at those same ETJ areas that y'all recommended that we get rid of and give back to the county for them to have complete jurisdiction over planning and permitting and so forth. In the Onslow Pines, Gum Branch, Ramsey, Halltown, and Piney Green area, there was about 5 areas. I don't remember exactly how many parcels there were, but it was quite a few parcels. And of course, we'll maintain that until the county actually takes over the complete jurisdiction of that. I don't know, Ryan, can you do an update on where they're at on that?
Yes, sir. So the statutes say that our zoning will stay in effect for 60 days until the county adopts their zoning, whichever comes first. And we communicated that with the county. We worked closely with them. And I believe, obviously, some of the meeting schedules have adjusted a little bit, but before we had council give us that April 21st effective date, we confirmed with the county that they had adequate time to get their zoning in place. I'm not sure if they've adopted their zoning just yet or not, but we did work with them to make sure that we didn't end up with an area that fell out of city zoning after 60 days prior to the county establishing zoning. So I think they had their April planning board, they had to kind of shuffle that date because of the COVID-19. So I think that they will have that before them this month or June at the latest, but they know that they had until the 21st of June, and they were okay with that when we worked out those deadlines and those dates.
We still have those undeveloped areas that are in the corridor entrances to Jacksonville. Still, if they're in ETJ, we've still got those. We basically got rid of those places that were already developed. I say we got rid of, we returned to the county that jurisdiction. If there's already a single family home on there, that it just was a little bit of a burden on them to have to get a permit from the city. And it probably was not fair that they had to do so, I think, under the current situation where they're never going to be annexed unless they want to be voluntarily, and most people are not going to want to volunteer to do that. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, that's basically it, I think. Hope I didn't confuse you with that last little bit of comment, but thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there being no old business, we'll go right to new business. Who's up? Jeremy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Board. Agenda item A is a rezoning proposal for 3301, 3315, and 3327 New Bern Highway. This application was submitted by Jenny Carol Humphrey, as well as Deborah and James Parker. The parcels before you on the vicinity map are those in question. You notice their location directly across from Wolf Swamp Road. Aerial photography, you will know that each of these parcels have single-family homes on them. The rezoning request for these 3 parcels is to rezone from the current corridor commercial zoning to residential multifamily low density. On the existing map before you, you will see across New Bern Highway, the Pumpkin Center Shopping Center, little strip center with the farm store, the Pumpkin Center Volunteer Fire Department to the southwest, And then to the north, and then again, across New Bern Highway, you'll see an abundance of residential multifamily low density zoning. The green is RSF 20, all used for single-family dwellings. Before you on the screen is the city's land use plan. You'll notice that it matches fairly accurately with the current zoning. However, the MX stands for mixed land use designation, which allows for residential or commercial or a combination thereof. Before you on the map is the proposed zoning. Just to give you a little background, the history on this property came up. One of the owners is looking to sell their home, and it had been vacant for some time. And in order to sell it, and because it was vacant, it wasn't usable. It was not, or I'm not usable, I'm sorry. If they were having a hard time getting financing because of the corridor commercial zoning, we could not say that if the home was 50% casualty damage, 50% casualty damage or more, they could not rebuild because it's a non-conforming use. So zoning, planning staff looked at this property. There's all family in the area, and they came in with a joint application. Staff is advising the Planning Advisory Board recommend approval to City Council of this rezoning request, that findings of fact A through J have been found in the affirmative, and the rezoning advances the public interest by limiting development among existing and developed residential properties. And I'll use the aerial to, again, show the single family in the area. I have spoken with the applicants, and actually, as of this morning, had received a letter from one of the adjacent property owners in support. There have been no calls in opposition. The ads were in the paper last Friday and will be this Friday, because if Planning Board makes their recommendation tonight, we'll be taking that to City Council next Tuesday night at 5 o'clock. Again, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Somewhat unrelated, but how far out on New Bern Highway does the city's jurisdiction go?
It's basically,
Just curiosity.
yeah, I'm fairly certain it's the parcel right there, just to the north.
That's just about the end of the jurisdiction.
Because obviously that's quite a ways out there. I mean, right across from Pumpkin Center.
And we did consider including this possibly in the recent ETJ reduction, but our city planning and projections show New Bern Highway to be potentially a growth corridor in the future, as you notice with the corner of Pine and Green and New Bern Highway. So leaving them within our jurisdiction, the ability to work with property owners down the road. But because there are existing land uses on this property, we felt that a rezoning is in order.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? I mean, it certainly looks, when you look at the aerial view, it certainly looks like it's a residential area, and I'm assuming we initially made it.
Yeah, I believe in the city extended its ETJL that in that area, for small parcels or anything directly on New Bern Highway or 17, it was just a blanket. We're gonna make it all commercial, in hopes that it will develop that way, and given the current uses, it just isn't at this time.
One other thing to keep in mind, at one time, in the last 15 or so years, you could have a single-family dwelling in the corridor commercial zone. So it was conforming. And it may have been 8, 10 years ago, we removed the single-family designations as far as a permitted or special use from the business districts. Remember, zoning needs to protect both the people that have the property and those around it. So it's not a good thing to have a single-family dwelling in a commercial district, because you could have a intensive land use that happens on either side, and then that person complain, but yet they're in the same zoning district that a business should be in. So that's when we eliminated the single family. We also we don't allow the multifamily in the corridor commercial for the first 300 or 350 feet. So that was a change that this board and city council made in the last 10 or 15 or so years. So it was probably when we rezoned it, as you originally questioned, it was probably because we saw on a commercial corridor, We gave it the business district. And then once that use table amendment occurred, it made it non-conforming, and this just fixes that issue for these three property owners.
Good questions. Thank you. Good answers. Motion? Anybody want to try it?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Al.
I move to grant rezoning upon the findings that the rezoning is reasonable, considering one or more of the above findings of fact A through J found in the affirmative, and the rezoning advances the public interest.
Very good. Second? Second from Mr. Sandy. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, let's go down to B. Site plan.
Mr. Chairman. Quick update, some of you may remember this, and I know we've got a couple of new board members. Since the original approval for 820 Barn Street for a proposed City of Jacksonville Recreation Center. As you know, this is a former site of a Jacksonville Fire Department station, 820 Barn Street. It is currently zoned residential single family, as are all properties in the area. Any other use, not residential, be it a governmental use or church or anything like that, requires a special use. In March 17th, 2015, City Council approved a Planning Advisory Board recommended special use permit with Type 3 site plan for the Jacksonville Recreation Department to operate a proposed rec center here. Fast forward a little over 2 years, and that site plan has expired. However, the special use permit is still valid. That site plan expired because there was not a permit issued. There was no construction started, basically no activity commenced, and the site plan expired. So in order for the city to move forward to bid and what have you, we need to, in hopes, to reapprove the Type 3 site plan. Before you and within your agenda is the same site plan that was approved a little over 2 years ago. Again, they are proposing very little improvements to the site other than reducing some asphalt. There will be some additional landscaping, access to the building. Majority of the improvements will be interior, cleanup, remodeling, and maintenance. There is some floodplain on the property to the direct south and to the east. The staff is advising that the planning board recommend this same site plan again to the city council for approval. And if it moves forward, the city council will have it in their next Tuesday night agenda. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Has this been getting much use since the fire department moved
As far
out?
as I know, if it's been used for anything, it's for temporary storage, but I do not believe it's used for anything. It has not received any permitting to be used for anything other than the old fire department.
Question I would have is, I recall from before that there was a question about the amount of parking spaces.
Correct.
For that size of a building.
It still falls within the required parking, just because a indoor recreation facility doesn't require a lot of parking in our ordinance, and I believe it's actually, without the entire site plan on it, if I recall, it's right there at the requirement, still complying with the UDO.
I think it became an issue because originally the Children's Museum was looking at
Correct.
doing something with that piece of property, and
Correct.
that's where those issues came up because the number of parents bringing a child or whatever, was going on at the time. So that was really the issue, I think, was holding on at that point. Since now Children's Museum's moved on in a different location.
I believe to say rec center isn't something like that's going on at Jacksonville Commons. This is, small organized classes, the occasional children's activity and whatnot, but not like the large activities that we see in the Commons areas.
Well, that answered my next question. And I was going to ask if you could foresee any group activities being held
If
there.
anything, you're looking at yoga classes, but obviously it'll be limited to the amount of participants that can use the facility accurately or actively under occupancy and parking.
I see it as a good thing that the city's gonna do something with it, because that building's just vacant and falling apart right now. So I go by it quite a bit. And like you said, it's become more of a storage, and it's just, now it's upgraded and put to use.
The concern I see, of course, so there would be no on-street parking allowed at this facility.
In a lot of streets within the city, on-street parking is allowed, and then obviously it's enforced by the police department. But I do not recall that the on-street parking being an option or discussed in the past, unless they're just for
Okay, so all
drop-off.
the parking is still gonna be located in the rear of the building.
Correct.
Let me add a little bit of clarity for what I know about the situation.
Okay,
From what I understand, you can park on any city street unless it's posted as no parking. So if it became a problem, then I believe the Traffic and Safety Committee and things of that nature would assess the need for posting it as no parking.
okay.
So I think until that happens, you would be able to park on the street. If it creates problems, then that might be something that would have to be looked at.
Well, it's right there near that crossing area too, for children going to school. So if it becomes a problem, people parking there, and now it becomes a hazard because you can't see people walking across, even though there's a crossing guard there, but that becomes a real issue. So I see where you're concerned.
Well, I know in the past when we've had schools and all that in neighborhoods,
Yes. that
parking is an issue. Okay, because they allow parking on streets, like you say. In an old neighborhood I lived in, a school has impacted, you know, and I know this is not a school, has impacted the livelihoods of those that live in older neighborhoods. So I'm a little I hate to use the term gun shy about even supporting something that I can see can possibly impact those lives. Right from down people parking in front of people's driveways, and, you know, when you've got people parking on, what'll happen was people will have eventually park on both sides of the street. All right? So that's still a little concern of mine anytime we have this. I agree, something needs to be done with the building, there's no doubt. But, you know, that's just a big concern of mine now, the impact that something like this will have on the surrounding area.
Any other discussion? I'm sure our comments will probably be, taken into consideration when they discuss what type of use they're gonna
Correct.
have.
We supply the draft Planning Advisory Board minutes to the city council with each item.
We get a copy of the minutes.
Okay, great discussion, good questions. Motion?
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the type 3 site plan for 820 Barn Street.
Do we have to approve the special use permit also?
Yeah, that is
Okay.
already approved, and we'll continue on indefinitely until it's either the UDO changes for some reason, or city council abolishes it, and they would have to do that in the form of a public hearing.
So we have a motion to approve the site 3 site plan by Dr. Lasan,
Second.
second by Steve Forney. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes. Thank you. And what comes after D? C.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, planning board members. As you will recall, at the March 9th planning board, we talked about this item, and now we have drafted the ordinance with the proposed code amendments based on the feedback that you so graciously supplied to us. And that is, as it relates to fencing around amenity ponds. And just to kind of give everybody a little bit of history, in 1998, city adopted pond fence and landscape requirements that even included an amortization that gave the businesses 5 years to comply. And then in 2011, city staff created two different standards, one for utilities and one for amenities. And basically the utilities are the ones with the more severe slopes, and those are the ones we want, that have fences around them, we wanted off of the road. And then the amenity ponds that allowed people to have the option to build one closer to the road, but without the fence. Well, we've had some businesses that have bought developments that had these amenity ponds, and then they've stuck up a fence and basically became in violation of our ordinance. They had some liability concerns, which we talked about extensively back in March. And we also had a conversation with city council and basically talked to you all about the issue, which is there's some owners that desire to install fences around amenity ponds, which right now today is prohibited. And the concerns, as I mentioned a second ago, liability. One of the things that we're worried about is public safety, but we're also worried about how does something look, you know, the aesthetics of the issue. So we came up with some options that we talked about with planning board, and then you all gave us some additional items. And we are now proposing that we would allow an optional fence around amenity ponds. It would have to be a decorative fence, and the standards would be that the maximum height would be 4 feet. It would be powder coated metal or similar material approved by the city manager. That wood, vinyl, and chain link is prohibited. And that the top rail be solid construction, so no spires or similar devices. That was one of the board's concerns, so we've got that wrote into the code. And then we've also eliminated the shrubs requirement from around the decorative fencing. So keep in mind that this is it's an option. So we didn't establish, one of the things that the board talked about was, well, what does the building code say about pools? This is optional, so we didn't take and add all of those 4-inch spacing criteria that the North Carolina Building Code establishes for the amenity ponds. Because remember, we're not saying that they have to be fenced at all. So we didn't want to create a standard when it's optional to begin with, but we did want to make sure that we had the maximum of 4 feet and that an adult would be able to scale the fence if a child were to get inside somehow. We did, and we're going to add these two fence examples, and you can see it's a solid rail at the top. And then to follow along with what the board's concern was about the fencing standards as it relates to the building code, is that we want to allow the decorative fencing around utility ponds. We don't want to not allow it. But if you put a decorative fence around the utility pond, that is where we will direct those folks to the building code to make sure that the openings are not bigger than they should be, because those have the more severe slopes, tend to be kind of behind buildings. So to kind of take it up a notch, since we are requiring fences around those devices. And we then also had to adjust the tables in this section. So that basically is the ordinance change highlights that is in your agenda item under Exhibit A or Attachment A. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
The ponds that require fencing, what is the height?
If you have to install a new fence, it's 4 feet. But it's a black or green vinyl coated fence is the requirement. This would allow them to put a 4-foot decorative fence should they so choose. Now, in 98, when we amortized, if there was already a 6 or 8 foot tall fence around the compound, we didn't make them add a 4-foot high fence around the pond. We let that existing fence suffice. Additionally, so basically we didn't make them change, but if you have a new fence that gets installed, it would be a 4-foot tall fence. That is the requirement. That is how the code's written.
For the utility pond, can they have both fence? Is it either or?
No, utility pond, they are required to have a fence of some sort. They can choose just to go with the basic vinyl coated black or green, or they could have a decorative fence. They could have a combination of the two. But that would be, they have an additional choice, but they have to put something around a utility.
Well, the fencing is the minimal. They may put vegetation around there.
I'm sorry, the vegetation's also required for the utility ponds.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Right.
Even when there's a fence?
Yes. And then with the decorative fence, because decorative fences are gonna be more expensive.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily wanna hide the decorative fences. That's why we are proposing to eliminate the shrub requirement for amenity ponds. You'd still have to put them in for the utility pond.
Okay.
I don't foresee many utility ponds having a decorative fence put around it. We're not trying to create the requirement of a decorative fence. We're trying to provide an option for somebody to be able to fence a amenity pond because they feel the need, or their insurance company feels the need for them to have some barrier. This provides that additional tool in the toolbox.
Why do we require vegetation around the ponds?
It boils down to really hiding the fence. And that's why with the decorative fence, with it being a more attractive type fence, we drop that shrub requirement off on the amenity pond. Plus, they're gonna be out closer to the streets.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, a motion is in order.
I'll make a motion. I recommend that we approve the UDO text amendment found in attachment A, and this amendment advances the public interest by adding optional fencing that could be used around amenity bonds within the current ordinance.
Motion's been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Keys. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes.
You did a good job with that.
Very good.
Chairman, you said you did a good job with that.
We appreciate the feedback that city council and the planning board gave to us, and it actually got incorporated. That's the way that it's supposed to work. So we do appreciate your wisdom and your thought process in everything that you do here for the citizens.
Okay, Ryan, you're up.
Well, this evening, I'd like to kind of add to what Mr. Keys stated during his invocation tonight, and that is, we lost a great public servant that sat there where you all are sitting tonight for many years. And I'm going to read a prepared statement, and this was Mayor Sammy Phillips prepared this statement. I'm going to read what the mayor had to say about James C. Dorn Jr. On behalf of the city of Jacksonville, the city council, and all those who have served with him, which are you all, and us, and benefited from his service, we mourn the passing of James C. Dorn. We issue our sincere condolences to his extended family, friends, and fellow board members who served and witnessed his passion for the city of Jacksonville. A member of the city's Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, the Onwassa Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, the city's Planning Advisory Board, a former law enforcement officer and a well-known volunteer, Mr. Dorn passed this morning after an extended illness, and this was Tuesday, May 5th. For more than 22 years, his passion has been ensuring the city's water and sewer infrastructure was sound and fiscally supported. Meetings of the advisory committee were marked with probing questions from Jim Dorn that sought to get the reasoning for every decision. He served as the vice chair of the committee from 2005 to 2014 and chaired the committee from 2014 to 2016. During a presentation in last year's 2019 Advisory Group Appreciation Dinner, many of his colleagues and fellow members praised him for unselfish, caring, dedicated concern for the city of Jacksonville. He has left a great legacy with his family, and I'm particularly proud of his son, Ronnie Dorn, who continues the tradition of public service because he serves as the Deputy Jacksonville Police Chief. Jim Dorn's service to our community is to be admired and copied. Our community's fabric is weakened because of his passing, but he helped to make it stronger as he worked to improve our services to our citizens. That will be his legacy, his deep and passionate concern for his community. So, just wanted to kind of take a moment to recognize what Mr. Dorn, did for the citizens here, citizens of Jacksonville. I was fortunate enough, I grew up on the same street that the Dorn family did. I grew up with Mr. Dorn's 4 kids. And I've worked with, obviously, Ronnie is currently the Deputy Chief of Police, so work with Ronnie still today. And I believe Jason and Trey, I've been friends with them, but I've also worked with them. I believe they both, I know Trey worked with the city. I think Jason may have as well over the years. But, long-time family person here in the city of Jacksonville, and went to his service this week, and had the Police Honor Guard, did a good job in doing what they do for his memorial service. So he will be missed, and we appreciate what all he had done for the city of Jacksonville. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Hearing nothing, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Robert Sandy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned.